Should severely retarded citizens be able to vote? My family just took my severely disabled brother to vote, and it was clear he was told how to vote. I am well aware there are different degrees of mental retardation, and so it is essential I clarify my brother's state. My 25-year-old brother does not suffer from a genetic mental issue, but most likely, as most doctors have suggested, the result of brain damage through birthing trauma. His writing, reading, and critical thinking skills are thought to be around a kindergartner's skill level. When he was 16, my father took him driving along empty county roads, and my brother drove them into a ditch after he was distracted by a rabbit. He has been incapable of holding a job, driving, or monitoring his own finances. So far he has been entirely uninterested in the election, instead opting for his habitual reruns of the Arthur and Barney shows we used to watch as children. My parents have guardianship over him, and it is clear he could never live independently. Despite his severely limited academic and critical thinking skills, he still has a healthy desire for social life. He has friends and he goes to a special needs school. He sees others going to vote, and wants to go vote as well. As of last week, he legally voted for a candidate in the state of Texas. I know my parents tell him how to vote, as my father jokingly told me about an argument they had after the primaries when my dad insisted he vote one candidate as my mother insisted he vote another. In many states, I read, it would be illegal for him to vote. I strongly believe my parents should not have taken him to vote, but I also ask myself how the laws should be. Why is he legally allowed to vote at all? Are the current voting laws just towards severely mentally disabled citizens? I would love to hear your thoughts, Reddit. While ripe for the opportunity for abuse, I fear what a system of disenfranchising people based on physical, mental, or emotional ability would mean in a democracy. Is a situation where parents coach a mentally disabled individual how and what to vote any different than a controlling husband dictating what his wife will vote for? My grandmother proudly proclaims she voted with her husband until his death and now takes her orders from my uncle, her oldest son, who is almost like my grandfather was. I don't like to hear it, but I would rather err on the side of all citizens regardless of ability being able to vote than we come up with a way to enshrine in law the ability to remove a person's right to vote for involuntary reasons, felons being an example of a voluntary reason for disenfranchisement. Yeah, but your grandma also knows that she could do otherwise if she wanted. OP's brother probably doesn't. I absolutely agree. I think you explained this really well. Although I'm uncomfortable with the idea of someone being coerced into something because they don't know any better, it would be dangerous for someone to have the power to draw the line on mental disabilities and rights in a political context. I'm also doubt anyone would agree on how to determine this anyway. It seems like cases like these would be too far and few between to bother trying to legislate either way. The potential drawback from any politician trying to claim the mentally retarded should have a threshold of competence to vote would be political suicide. At the same time, there are millions of voters who vote without knowing anything about the candidates other than what they read in headlines. This is uninformed voting as well, albeit on the trailing edge of the spectrum. Let everyone vote. It's up to the voter to be as informed as they want to be or can be. Your brother and those in similar positions as him would be a fraction of the voting populace. As his brother, where you come down on the issue? Great response. I've been hesitant to give my opinion on law because I have a conflict of interest. I will vote for the other candidate, and I am frustrated because his vote will cancel out mine despite all the research and time I have put into my decision. However, after reading the views here, it is clear that there are many areas that government should stay out of. For example, I do not think it is neither ethical nor safe for severely moderately disabled people to have children, but there are also no ethical options. The government has to stop these situations. I think it was unethical for my parents to take my brother to vote. However, I am also not going to worry about it because, as you pointed out, it holds such little repercussion that it would be stupid for me to act on it. The only legal solution I could see would be to limit the voting requirements to require the voter to be over 18 and to also not have anyone claiming guardianship over him, her. It would be political suicide though, so I doubt it will ever be done. My first thought is the old quote, from I forget who: I'd rather endure the problems that come with too much freedom than the problems that come from too little. We set the bar at 18, which is entirely arbitrary. It's not a moral thing, or a rational thing. It's just a decent rule of thumb. Some people younger than 18 are surely more fit to vote than some people over 18. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad line to draw. We need to have laws. Everybody is influenced by other people. There's nothing wrong with telling your friends, family, or anyone on the street how to vote. At the end of the day, when they're in the booth, the choice is theirs and theirs alone. The fact that some people are more susceptible to suggestion than others shouldn't be a concern. Ever hear of voter literacy testing? It was basically a way to deny black and other minority voters from being able to register. If we set a standard other than the usual one, being 18 2, being a legal citizen 3, not having a felony conviction, we are basically asking for the system to be abused and deny people the right to vote. Let him vote. He enjoys it, has fun and likely knows as much as many who are going out to cast their votes. I am not going to judge his intelligence or ability because there is still much to be learned about brain function and I don't want someone else making this choice for anyone. If he's got together enough to properly vote on his own, let him do it. Great point. For my personal situation, one vote is not a big enough deal to really be concerned. However, I do think it is still a relevant and complex issue. 30 states currently have voting restrictions for people with mental disabilities. This is a great answer, really. Every citizen gets a vote, no matter what. Some people cast votes simply to prevent someone else from winning. Others vote because they believe lies they've been fed. People vote based on race or gender alone. People vote to uphold whatever faulty or antiquated beliefs their families held before them. This isn't really that different. He still has to physically go in by himself and complete the voting process alone. Let him vote. You have to consider the administrative feasibility of any proposed restriction of their voting rights. The only way to identify a group whose rights would be restricted would necessarily be by some kind of test. And any such test would need to be administered either to the population at large, opening it up to many attempts at corrupting it, or to a select group identified as being of questionable competence, carrying the risk of gravely insulting the improperly selected. Seems far easier to let everyone vote who's eligible by law, as negligible harm is done by preserving their voting rights even when they are vulnerable to manipulation, as it would be an evenly distributed segment of existing aggregate voting flaw.